I still remember the morning I found Tunde on the floor of our classroom, crying like someone whose whole world had scattered. His small shoulders were shaking, his eyes were red, the class was shouting at him, the dustbin was turned over, the whole place was noisy. That moment hit me like cold water. It was the kind of scene that makes a teacher stop breathing for a second. I did not understand why a boy who always acted so strong suddenly broke down like that. Before I tell you how we got there, let me go back to the beginning, because the story did not start with tears. It started with small signs I ignored. I first noticed Tunde on a Tuesday morning at the start of the term. I came into the class early thinking I was the first person as usual, but the classroom was already clean. The chairs were arranged in straight lines. The chalkboard was wiped until it shone. Even the windows were open to bring in fresh air. I smiled and told maybe the prefects were finally taking their duties seriously. But when I looked around, it was just one small boy standing with a broom in his hand. His uniform was neat. His face was calm. He looked like he had been working for a long time. I asked him who told him to come that early to sweep. He simply said he came because he wanted the class to look nice before everyone arrived. He did not talk too much. He just kept sweeping until he finished. I nodded and told him well done. After that day, I thought it was only a one-time thing, but the next day, he was there again, and the next, and the next. Every morning before 6:30, the classroom smelled fresh. The dust was gone. I began to rely on it without knowing. I would walk into the class and expect the bright board and the clean floor. I even stopped scolding the prefects for not sweeping, because someone else was doing their work better than them. The other children noticed too. When they saw him sweeping every morning, they started saying he wanted attention. Some laughed at him. Some called him names. They did not understand him, and I did not stop them enough. Looking back, I wish I'd paid more attention, because behind that broom was a story none of us imagined. And it was only a matter of time before everything broke open, right in front of my eyes. That same week, something happened that stayed with me. I walked into the class one afternoon during break, thinking I would meet children playing or talking loudly. Instead, I met Tunde, sleeping on his desk. His head was resting on his folded arms. His body looked small and tired, like someone carrying a load bigger than him. The whole class was noisy, but he was sleeping through it. I touched his shoulder gently and his eyes opened slowly. He sat up fast, like someone afraid of being caught. I asked him if he was feeling sick, but he shook his head. He said he was just tired. I told him to drink water. He nodded again and sat quietly until the bell rang. When the other children came in, shouting and pushing chairs, he just stared at his table as if he was carrying something heavy inside him. That was the second time I felt something was not normal with the boy. Days passed and he kept coming early to sweep. He would greet me softly, take the broom and start working. The class prefects became lazy because they knew Tunde would do their job. Some children started leaving their wrappers and papers on the floor on purpose. They would say things like, "Leave it, Tunde will come early and clean it." It made me angry, but whenever I tried to caution them, they always replied that if he liked sweeping so much, they should allow him. One morning, I came to school earlier than usual because I had papers to mark. The sky was still dark. I walked past the security post and saw a small figure sitting on the floor, leaning on the wall. It was Tunde. His head was bent, and it looked like he was asleep. I called his name lightly. He woke up at once and stood up. His eyes were swollen, like someone who had cried or had not slept well. I asked him why he was sitting outside so early. He said the gate had not been fully opened, and he did not want to disturb anybody. He said he came early to finish sweeping before the others arrived. His voice was calm, but something inside me felt uneasy. That was not the kind of answer a child his age should give with such seriousness. Later that day, a new student joined our class. His name was Solar. He was friendly and talkative. He observed things quickly. After 2 days, he came to me during lunch and asked why only one person swept the class every morning. I told him it was a long story. He looked at me like he suspected something deeper. That was the first time I saw someone else watching Tunde closely, the way I had been watching him quietly. And that was when the story started to open, slowly like a door we never paid attention to before. One afternoon after the last lesson of the day, I noticed that Tunde and Sola were the only ones still in the classroom. The other children had rushed out to buy snacks or play on the field, but those two stayed behind arranging books for a group project. I pretended not to watch them, but from the corner of my eye, I saw Sola asking Tunde questions. Tunde kept giving short answers, the kind that hide more than they explain. Sola did not stop. He kept talking, smiling, trying to make him open up. It was the first time I saw anyone trying to understand Tunde instead of laughing at him. When I left school that day, the sun was already going down. As I got to the staff gate, I saw two small figures ahead of me. It was Tunde and Sola. They were walking slowly, and it looked like Sola was trying to follow Tunde home. At first, I thought they lived in the same direction, but then I noticed the way Tunde suddenly turned and faced him. His body looked tense. Sola stopped too. They talked for a few seconds, and then they walked separate ways. Even from far away, I could see something serious had passed between them. It was not the usual talk children have after school. The next morning, I came to the class and found everything clean again. The usual neat floor, the chairs in perfect lines, the chalkboard bright like someone washed it. But something was different. Tunde was not sweeping. He was sitting quietly at the back, with his head bent. His hands looked weak. Sola was the one holding the broom. He was cleaning the front of the class with slow, careful movements, watching Tunde the whole time as if he was worried. I walked closer and asked him why he was sweeping. He smiled and said he wanted to help. When I looked at Tunde, he just sat there with his face down. That was the moment I understood that something had changed between the two boys. I felt a push inside me to find out what exactly happened, but I also felt like I needed to wait. Children open up better when you give them space. After assembly that day, the class started group work. Sola and Tunde were in the same group, and for the first time, I saw Tunde talking more than usual. He was still quiet, but his voice had more life. At break time, they shared water from the same bottle. A few children teased them, but Sola ignored them. And somehow that made Tunde ignore them too. It was like Sola was slowly pulling Tunde out from a shell he had lived inside for too long. Later, during handwriting class, I walked between the desks checking their work. When I reached Tunde, I noticed something on his wrist. A small mark. It looked like a scratch or a bruise. Before I could ask, he covered his hand quickly. His eyes met mine for a second. That look told me more than words could. It told me something was happening in his life that he did not know how to explain. Something he was hiding the same way he hid the mark. As I walked back to my table, I felt a heaviness in my chest. I had been a teacher for years, and I knew that when a child carried that kind of silence, it always pointed to a story that could break anyone's heart. And deep inside me, I knew we were getting closer to the truth, whether we were ready for it or not. Everything broke open on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning that starts normal but ends in a way nobody forgets. I walked into the class expecting to see the usual neat room, but as soon as I stepped in, my heart dropped. The classroom was scattered. Papers were everywhere. Chairs were upside down. The chalkboard was full of scribbles. The floor looked like 10 children ran around with dirty shoes. I was confused for a moment because this was never how our class looked in the morning. Before I could call anyone, I saw a small crowd at the back of the room. The children were shouting at someone. When I pushed through them, I saw Tunde standing there. His eyes were full of tears he was trying to hide. He looked lost. Just next to him, a dustbin was turned over. Some children were pointing fingers at him. Others were shouting words that made me angry. One boy said he finally got tired of forming good boy. Another girl said he only swept because he wanted attention. Someone else said he had been pretending since the beginning of the term. Their voices were sharp and cruel. They were hitting him harder than any stick could. Before I could stop them, Tunde broke down. His tears fell fast. He tried to cover his face with both hands, but the tears kept coming. His whole body shook. The class went silent for a moment. They were shocked to see him cry like that because he was always calm, always strong, always quiet. I rushed to him and held his shoulders. His uniform was rumpled. His eyes were swollen. He could barely breathe. I led him outside the classroom, away from the crowd. We sat on the bench near the window. He cried for a long time. I did not talk yet. I let him breathe. I wiped his face with a handkerchief and waited. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and cracked, like someone forcing words out of a cracked heart. He said he came late because his mother had collapsed the night before at her cleaning job. She had been taken to the hospital. He had spent the morning taking his little sister to a relative's house and trying to find someone to help him with transport. He said he wanted to sweep, but by the time he reached school, the class was already open and children were inside. They saw the mess and blamed him for not doing what he always did. He said he did not know why they were angry. He said he did not even have strength to talk. As he spoke, everything inside me became heavy. I felt pain for him. I felt shame that I did not see the signs earlier. I held his hand and he held mine back like someone who finally found a place to rest the weight of his worry. While we were sitting there, Sola ran out of the class. His face looked scared. He told Tunde he was sorry. He told him he should have told the class to calm down. He sat beside him and held his arm. That small act made Tunde cry again, but this time it was softer. I looked through the window at the rest of the children. Their faces were full of guilt. They knew they went too far. They knew they judged him without understanding him. That was the moment the truth touched all of us at once, like a bright light showing everything we had ignored for too long. The morning that started messy became the morning that opened every eye in that classroom, including mine. After that Thursday morning, everything in the class shifted. The children who once laughed at Tunde now walked around with quiet faces, like people who had just discovered they were wrong about someone they thought they understood. Even the loud ones were silent. You could feel the guilt sitting in the air like heavy fog. Nobody wanted to look at me directly, and nobody wanted to look at Tunde either, because looking at him meant facing what they had done. I allowed the class to settle before calling them together. I told them to sit and listen. I stood in front of them, feeling their eyes on me, feeling their hearts beating like drums in that silent room. I told them what happened. I told them about Tunde's mother collapsing at work. I told them about his little sister. I told them he had been carrying responsibilities bigger than any child should carry alone. When I finished, the classroom was so quiet you could hear the breeze outside pushing the curtain. The children looked at one another, ashamed. One by one, they got up from their seats and came to where Tunde was sitting. Some said sorry with shaky voices. Others touched his shoulder gently. A few hugged him quickly before running back to their chairs with wet eyes. I watched their small faces and felt something soften inside me. Children can be harsh, but they can also change fast when the truth touches them. Later that day, I went to the staff room and made a decision. I called the PTA chairman and explained everything. I told him we needed to help this family. By the next week, parents had contributed money for Toon's mother's hospital bills. Some sent food, some sent clothes for his sister. One parent, a nurse, went to the hospital to check on his mother personally. When I visited her, she was weak, but smiling, grateful in a way that made my eyes warm. She held my hand and said she did not know people still cared like that. Back in school, the class came up with a plan on their own. They made a sweeping and cleaning roster. Every day, 2 children cleaned the class. They told Tunde he did not have to sweep again, except he wanted to. The first morning they started the new routine, I watched them with quiet pride. They were laughing, talking, pushing chairs together, doing the work he once carried alone. Tunde stood at the door watching them. His face was calm, and for the first time I saw a small smile rise on his mouth, the kind of smile that comes when a burden finally drops. Sola never left his side again. They walked to school together. They shared lunch together. Sometimes they even swept together when they felt like it, not because anyone forced them, but because friendship had grown where loneliness used to sit. Weeks later, when Tunde's mother was discharged from the hospital, she came to the school to thank the class. She wore a simple dress and held Bisola's hand. The children gathered around her excitedly. She blessed them with soft words that made some of them hide their faces shyly. Tunde stood beside her with his shoulders straight, like someone who finally felt seen. When she left, I watched Tunde return to his seat. He looked different, stronger, lighter. He sat down, opened his book, and looked around the room. The class was quiet, waiting for the lesson to start. The sun came through the window and landed on his table like a warm hand. That was the moment I knew the story had come full circle. The boy who once swept the class alone was no longer alone. The class he cleaned every morning had finally learned how to clean their hearts too. And from that day, our classroom felt new, not because the floor was neat, but because the children inside it had changed in a way I would never forget.